useful for my well-being. My work was also very useful for my well-being. So in class, in my internships, in the sites, the construction sites that I went to, all those things created avenues for me to learn new things. So my work as a student did not take away from my social life or my home. And neither did my social life take away or take a backseat to my work. And so that's the first lesson that I want to share with you. That your environment, the environment that you are in, can create the right place for you to have a good well-being, or it can have a good influence on your well-being. The university environment I was in provided a lot of experiences, a lot of opportunities to be able to connect, to be active, to learn, to give, to take notice, so many opportunities. And so if you have the choice, choose the right environment, choose the right people, choose the right organizations for your work so that they would then improve your well-being. And unfortunately, even though I learned this in my undergraduate, I didn't apply this in my PhD journey. One of the other things I learned, particularly through the PhD journey in the hard way, is that if you undermine your well-being, and if you are not intentional about your well-being, you can have the opportunity, the same resources, and yet you will undermine yourself and your success. Well-being is a resource. It's not, it's not a second thought. It's not a nuisance. So in my PhD journey, I had my PhD. There are a few interruptions, sorry. So in my PhD journey, I was in the same university, same environment, nothing had really changed, right? The only thing that had changed is that the social network that I had built for myself, many of them were my mates, and so many of them left. So I had to start from scratch. But it was the same environment, the same opportunity to start again. But unlike my undergraduate journey, in my PhD, I didn't have any roommates. I lived alone in my room. I didn't have a lot of engagement with my hostel mates because we all had different schedules. I had very few classmates. In my time, we were only 3 that were enrolled on the PhD program. Only 2 of us made it to campus, and 1 person dropped out along the way. So I was the only one on the PhD program for my year group. So in the first few years on the PhD journey, I was fine. It was okay. But as the time went on and then the years were running and then the deadlines were coming up, which is what it looks like in our life today, isn't it? Once the deadlines started approaching, then the problem started. I spent a lot of time just focusing on my studies. My PhD became the center of my world. I dropped out of the choir. I dropped out of the clubs that I belonged to. There were a few things I still did. So I still went to the swimming pool once a while. And then I had a few friends that checked on me occasionally. But most of the time, I worked from my room. And I must admit, those were very, very lonely times. Okay. But the highlights of those times were the people who tended to reach out to me. That small inner circle that I had created in my undergraduate years, those were the people who held me up during my PhD years. My family, my friend Yvonne, Senna, Courage, and then Senyo. Senyo is now my husband, right? Then he wasn't my husband, he was my friend. But these were the people who held me in that time. And I did complete my PhD, but it wasn't a rich experience. It wasn't a rewarding experience on my social side. What is the big lesson I learned from that time? Look, the investments that you make in meaningful relationships are not wasted. And when there are difficult times, there will be going forward and in the past. They are the people who are going to sustain you when you can't hold yourself up. The second thing I learned also is that there are things that people can do, but if I don't take responsibility for my own well-being and be intentional about connecting, giving, learning, being attentive to how I'm feeling and what I'm doing, I will undermine my own well-being and I will undermine my own success. So that's the lessons that I learned. How does this apply to me now? Now that, in my work life. And I'll talk about just two things to conclude. So for us as academics, there's always the pressure, right? Balancing work and balancing your family. They are not either or. They both help you to function well, and they both help you to be successful. And for me, the first thing I had to do was to balance my own expectations of balance. I had to tell myself and I had to learn that there's just so much I can do. I know there's a lot of talk about you can do it, you can do that, I know. But I had to learn that there are constraints, and we do this in project management. You have to be aware of your constraints in terms of your time, your resources, and even your physical abilities. And that's the first thing I had to do for myself. So I literally drew up a list, and every day I do this. I know many of us have a to-do list, but in addition to my to-do list, I think my list that I have that really helps me is my have done list. I have a list of all the things I have done every day or accomplished every day in my home and in my work. What does this do for me? There's always going to be a long to-do list, and that can keep you unsettled and can keep you feeling like you haven't done enough. But my have done list, when I focus on that, I see all the things I've achieved. And it's rewarding to see all the things I've achieved. It also helps me to see where I'm spending my time and make changes to those things. So that's the big thing that I have learned to do, to keep a have done list. Another thing that being mindful of my constraints has done is to now connect. And this is something that all the speakers would continue to highlight. Connection is so important. And if you are to connect to other people, to be able to help you with your constraints, right? The constraints doesn't mean you are limited. It just means that you have to reach beyond yourself to find places where you can find support. Okay. And if you are married, your spouse can be your biggest ally, but your spouse can also be your biggest enemy. Now, luckily for me, my husband is my biggest support. And again, I encourage those who are not yet married or don't have partners. If you have to choose, please choose a partner who helps you to function well in your work, in your home, and in your other roles. And remember that you also have to give the same to your partner. So for my partner and I, we've had to make major career changes along the way. And I have had to sacrifice and support him at different times in the home and in his work. And he has also had to sacrifice in the home, holding the home down, and also sacrifice for me to progress in my career. And you need that. But even if you have the most supportive partner in the world, that is not going to be enough. You have to build support networks everywhere, everywhere. So the picture I have on my screen, the first picture to the left is my little one some years ago in the career over there. My brother, that is family, connection with family, is the one standing up, and the other two are colleagues from work. So there are times when my family, my husband hasn't been available. And these two colleagues have been the ones sometimes to pick up my kids from me from school or drop them off from school, surprisingly. And I haven't even had to ask, right? But these are also things that we can do for other people, support other people to do the things and to ride on their careers. Okay. Now, in the second picture, that's me with two colleagues from another job of mine. Now, I had to transition into a new role, and I was teaching a course I had never taught before. These two gentlemen were my mentors. They helped me to learn. They pitched in for me at work to make sure that I knew my stuff. But also, they pitched in for me so that I could be away for a period to be with my young child when I had my last child. So find people who have the same values towards balancing work and family so that they can support you. The third picture is my colleagues from my professional network. I do a lot of things in my professional network, but it's because people like these support me to do those things. And finally, the last picture, I have my colleagues, Millicent and Theodora. It's a blurry picture, but I chose to show it because this is us at a boot camp writing some for publication. So we have a boot camp, we focus on just publications, right? See how relaxed the environment is. See how there's joy and learning and engagement. It's work and home or social life mixed together so that we can succeed. Okay. So that is what I want to say in terms of balancing both your work and your life. So all work, all well and good. How about the publications? How about the publications? For me, I finished my PhD in 2013, and I'm still at senior lecturer, the position of senior lecturer. And for some people, taking at face value, some might rate my progression as slow. So how have I navigated that? What do you do in an environment that is achievement-driven, performance-driven, publications? What do you do? How do you deal with your own narrative in your head? Okay. For me, I had to acknowledge where I am and what I wanted or where I wanted to go. And so 3 years ago, I took a break. I took a break to focus on both my work and my home. My work because I needed to build my career properly. It's not just a job for me, it's my life work, right? It's my life work and it has to be done well. So I took a break and I had specific goals I wanted to achieve. I wanted to build up my professional network a bit to expand it. So I took a few exams to do that. I also got elevated to fellowship, so I tried to focus on that as well. And then I also focused on my publications, right? Not many publications. For me, even one publication during that time was good enough for me, right? But I took that break. So take control of your own life, but you also have to give yourself grace in doing that. And then finally, I chose to spend a little more time with my family during that break. So these are the things that I've tried to do. But even beyond, taking specific steps to move my career ahead, to improve my well-being in my job, there is a certain narrative in the space that we are in, which is always giving pressure, publish, push, work. So sometimes you can get overwhelmed and you can get to pushing yourself to work too much. How do I deal with that? I look at the internal narrative and the internal dialogue I have, and I reframe that narrative for myself. I accept that sometimes I feel sad. Sometimes I feel I am late. That's reflection and taking notice. Sometimes I do feel like maybe there might have been opportunities I may have missed. Sometimes I do feel like maybe some people are going fast and I'm crawling. But what do I tell myself? I reframe that narrative. I ask myself, what were you doing? Now I tell myself, instead of working long hours, I chose to give my time to my children. I chose to nurse them to sleep or carry them on my back. I chose to drop them off at school and see their faces light up whenever I pick them up. I chose to dance with them, to sing lullabies together. I chose to spend time with my husband and ask him, how is your day going? How is your career going? How's work? And then also talk about it with him as well. I chose to take walks together as a family, to go on holiday. I chose to talk to my students instead of just always focusing on publications. Spend time with my students, talk to them, ask them about their work, but also ask them about their lives and support them and mentor them through their struggles, through their relationships. I chose to spend time by my father's sick bedside. I chose to spend time being a quantity surveying ambassador and to rest instead of burning the midnight candle at both ends. So I chose a path that allowed me to function well, to feel good, both at home and also at work. And that narrative for me changes the perspective for me. And so that's what I want you to also pay attention to. My career adventure is different. My experience is different. It is ongoing. What is your unique path? What are your unique experiences? What are your unique challenges? And what is your vision for your career, for your home, and for the other roles that you play? So I encourage you, as I come to an end, to find that unique path that allows you to put your well-being at the center so that you can be successful in your career and successful in your home and successful as a good friend, as a good mentor, etc. So I encourage you, connect, be active, keep learning, give, notice all the things, the beautiful things that are happening around you, and create a journey that you find fulfilling. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to some engagement, further engagements.
Thank you so much, Dr. Na. So many things to unpack. But thank you. It was really an interesting session. Some of the things that stood out to me, you talked about the fact that our career adventure should be more like an experience. It should be more about the experiences we gain, either good or bad, so that we can use it to improve our lives. It shouldn't just be about the end, but the experiences we gain in between. We also talked about functioning well in all our roles, either as parents, as mothers, as teachers, as researchers, at the workplace, functioning well and feeling good. Functioning well and feeling good. You talked about intentionality. Intentionality was a key word that you kept using. If you don't take care of yourself, no one is going to do that for you. If you don't create the enabling environment for yourself, no one is going to care about that. So you have to take the responsibility. We have to take the responsibility ourselves to protect our well-being, to enhance our well-being. You also talked about relationships, very important, that as we navigate through, we should identify meaningful relationships and stick with them. And you talked about also keeping a have done list. as against the normal to-do list. Yes, we've heard you. And then, yes, another thing that struck me was that we shouldn't just only look for support. We should also be supporters. We should also give support to others. We see a young mother that is trying to, to manage herself. We should be that hearing ear. We should be that person that will help to, to drop the child in school or help to be the shoulder on which the person will cry on and things like that. This just made me remember something that happened in my university some years ago. A colleague was sharing, not in my department, she was sharing with me that day. She was crying. She was like, this prof said to her, you want to be a professor like me, so take whatever comes your way. She said in a very hard way, in a very harsh way. Okay, she made her feel as if, to be a professor, you must suffer. You must go through all the pains and all of that. So we should be people that could help. We should be ladders, to other people. So Dr. Now, there's so much to really talk about from your lecture, and I'm sure everyone agrees with me, and at the appropriate time, we would have questions and contributions. You also talk so much about seemingly perfect situation, but I'm sure there are others that you talked about your husband, who is your supporter and stuff. You had good family relationship, people that helped you from the family front and from, your husband, your family. There might be others that might not have a similar story and they might want to ask. I'm sure when the time comes, they would have answers for our colleagues that might be in those situations. But thank you anyway, Dr. Na. Your lecture was really brilliant. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to Dr. Miriam. Let's have your thoughts on this.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good afternoon. We can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
we can hear you.
Can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. So sorry, I was trying to get connected earlier on when you called on me.
Yeah, it's fine.
And yeah, but I'm here, and I'm glad that I'm here. So I will just share my experiences. Meanwhile, I want to say that it's been very insightful listening to Dr. Loveling and listening to Dr. Nana. It's been very, very insightful. It just looks as though they had practically shared it all, but I will still share my bit from my own experience. So when I got the topic to be a panelist on this, I like Dr. Nana, felt kind of leftish because it's not my core area of research, but I know that we all can identify with it. We all can identify with the topic of emotional, mental, and physical well-being as we try to have an impactful career. So in thinking about it, I just came to 4 ways of looking at it from my own point of view. I got to understand that for you to arrive at a point where you would have handled these key issues of being emotionally, mentally, and physically in health, as it were, and then making an impact. For me, there are 4 ways I look at it. The first thing is to understand who you are. For me, this understanding came to me early as an undergraduate student of architecture. I think that was really my first year, in the university. I had come from a secondary school background that was competition-driven, success-driven, and all of that. And we had our fair share of it. And then in getting to the university, which looks like a place of freedom, in quotes, a place where you could choose what you wanted to do and when you wanted to do it. I think somewhere at that beginning time, I got swept away and almost lost myself in my academic pursuit. I remember one very important experience that I had that eventually changed the trajectory of things for me, even up until now as a practicing architect and lecturer. I went with my friends to class that particular evening. We're preparing for examination, and we all were in class. And I checked in the hall when we were reading. It was basically freshers, fresh students that were there. The hall was filled with fresh students preparing for exams. And we read and we read. And then somewhere, I think I had just read for about 3 hours or so, and I felt I had read enough. And then I looked around the hall. Almost everybody else was still bent on what they were doing. And I knew that the right thing to do was to stand and to go to your hostel and take some rest. But when I looked around, I was pressured to stay. Not that anybody pressured me. I pressured myself to stay, feeling that if I stood up to leave, it would look as though you're a serious person. So I sat there for many more hours, not really reading and yet not going. I want to clearly state that that particular exam did not go well the next day. I didn't do well because I just got into the flow of following the crowd and what they were doing, and it didn't work for me. It took like 2 more years for me to actually understand my own personality, my own academic, particularly my person and my academic personality. And then after I understood whom I was 2 more years later, this time around in 3rd year, and I knew what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And so it became a foundation per se of how I have carried on with every other thing I have done, even up till now. So much so that I don't get pressured by who is doing what around me. Like I would say, I don't compete with people per se. I compete with myself. I want to develop myself to being a better version of what I was yesterday. I want to break the record that I set for myself yesterday. So I just keep pushing in that direction. So the first thing for me is know who you are. Know what works for you. What works for somebody else may not work for you, but you have to sit down with yourself, analyze who you are. And in getting to do that, sometimes I sit down and I carry out a kind of SWOT analysis of myself. I want to understand what my strengths are. I want to know what are my weaknesses, what areas am I weak in, what are the opportunities around me, what could possibly threaten these opportunities around me. Most times I take time and I note down these things, because in knowing who you are, it is very key in achieving or in carrying out what you want to do. Because it is in understanding who you are that you can now know, what do I do? For instance, what do I do with my strengths? What do I do with my weaknesses? Or what do I do about my weaknesses? What about the opportunities around me? How do I cash in on it? And then, are there possible threats that I should avoid in the process? That will inform what you do. With, first of all, understanding who you are, what works for you, and then what you do. Then, having understood that part, you will move on a little bit to the place where you understand where you are in the moment. Where am I currently? And where am I going to? Because a lack of understanding of this can make one to go around and around in trajectories that are not where you should actually tread. So it is important to know where you are and where you're going to. And then let me talk a little bit about, maybe I'll digress a little bit to the place of the opportunities that are around you. The opportunities that are around us most of the time will come in the form of building networks, which two of the previous speakers have extensively talked on. Building networks and relationships, because I have come to understand in my trajectory, in my journey, that relationships are currencies that are bankable. You know, the way we bank money and then you eventually go to withdraw some of the monies you have, that's what relationships are. Because when you build relationships and you develop relationships. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Good. Okay, great. So when you build relationships, you develop relationships, you may find that there are days when you are not just feeling on top of your game. You would have to fall back on some of those relationships you've had. I heard Dr. Nana talking about her journey in her PhD and how her networks helped to make it possible for her. It seems almost like a similar experience. Mine was a very turbulent journey. My PhD journey was very turbulent for many reasons. But what saw me through all of those times were these networks that had already been established. I had the absolute support of my husband, and he made it a lot easier for me to navigate that very murky waters of PhD, as it were. I had friends who stood by me, encouraged me, prayed with me, just stood by me. They went with me all the way through the program. It looked as though I was actually carrying out that PhD research with my friends, standing by me. And all of that are things that someone would have built. You don't wait for the day of trouble. You build these things ahead of the day of trouble, because when the day of trouble comes, you will now bank in on them. Like you will normally go to the bank to withdraw. That's when you go to your relationship bank to make withdrawals that will be very helpful for your journey. So in talking about, also, you will have to have some level and some great level of empathy in relating with people as well. Not just that, like Dr. Nana said, having people support you, you also be a support system for other people. I had to change jobs as an academic. I was, first of all, in the Polytechnic. And then after my PhD, I felt I needed to challenge myself further. So I now transited to the university. In getting to the university, it's a different experience on its own from where I was coming from. But I knew I had to learn about the environment where I was in. I had to learn about my colleagues. I had to learn about my students and to know the best way to navigate. And one thing stood out clearly was that in the midst of all of humanity and all of us, you will see that people are going through so many things. And sometimes a little dose of empathy will help a lot. I've had situations where a student had told himself that it was over, that he was leaving, he didn't have what it takes to continue his academic journey and all of that. For whatever reason, he just felt like, let him just get by Dr. Miriam's office and tell her that he was actually on his way out. In fact, he had packed his things. And then I sat down in the midst of all that one had to do. I sat down and I listened for many hours. I narrated all his ordeal to summarize it and to put it succinctly. By the grace of God, we ended up talking with him and reasoning with him. And finally, he was able to stay back and graduate. And it was such a joy to see him on the day when he graduated. There are so many experiences of those who some students who were not in talking terms with their parents, and they had family issues and all of that. And then I give them my listening ears, and they share their experiences and all of that. And along the line, you see relationships between parents and children mended, and all of that adds to your well-being and your joy in seeing that you're valuable, in seeing that you're adding value or you're doing something in the life of some person. I didn't really think of it as something that was anything extra that I was doing. I just felt I was just being myself. Until recently, last year, when a group wrote me and said they wanted to honor me as a mentor. They wanted to give me an award as they had noticed that I was a great mentor. Well, I didn't think of myself that way, but they felt that they weren't going to do that. I said, oh, that's great. I just muted it to my head of department. I said, a group of this nature wants to give me an award, and I wouldn't mind if I just wanted him as the head of my department to come. I wasn't making it an open thing. But I don't know how it filtered out into the ear of one student. I mean, in the present place where I am. And before you knew it, we came to the event, and the hall was filled with my current and my former students, even from the Polytechnic, my former students from the Polytechnic and all. And it was and each person wanted to say something about how I listened to them sometimes, and all of those things. I didn't quite take notes of them as something that was extra. But you see, in maintaining a well-being that will help us through the trajectory of our careers as academics, as mothers, as wives, these are all challenging spots, even as sisters, because sometimes being the Africans that we are, sometimes your attention is required in your maiden home. Being all of that, you will require to be a person that has on you empathy for people, being a support system for people, which eventually trickles back to you to give you that balance that you need to carry on with your journey. Then in the area of maybe academics proper, being an academic, carrying out your researches and all of that, just like some of previous speakers have spoken, I found out the need for collaboration. Earlier on, I liked to publish alone. I like to be a one-man researcher, getting there, do my research. It just gave me great joy to see maybe my works being published and all of that. But as I grew in this work, I realized that the need to collaborate with other people was key. I realized that you are richer for it when you can collaborate with other people, because much as we all are striving towards a particular goal of getting to the echelon of our careers, we're better off standing together. We're better off encouraging ourselves together. So I began to leverage on that. And truth be told, it had yielded so much more result that maybe I would have been able to get all by myself, working it all by myself. So it is very key to do that. Then creating a balance of all of this, it is also important for us to, from time to time, check our health, to go for regular medical checks. I just want to check how I'm doing. I want to check how I'm doing. I'd had to go on that path over time, get into the clinic from time to time, check my health status and all of that. Because the truth remains that you need your body as a living human being to achieve whatever goals you set for yourself. And then maybe finally, because I know there's still some other persons that want to share, it may be important for us to listen to our emotional self, sometimes how exactly do you feel? I know that most often when we are asked, how are you? You often will say fine. But sometimes when you're not fine, it may be okay to say truthfully, I am not fine. In just admitting how unwell or unfine you are, you may be surprised to know that help is just around the corner. So when you don't feel fine, admit it, check your health, check what you're eating, check how you're doing, and all of that. And finally, with all of that in place, it will be, I won't say it to be easy, but you will be on your way to achieving your goals. Also, finally, let me not forget this. The home support is very key because as women, sometimes you are the one that is in the forefront of keeping the home. You have your husband, you have your kids, and all of that. Sometimes it may be necessary for you to get help in the home. Maybe you could pay, if you can pay for, if you need a nanny, you could pay for a nanny or some domestic assistant or gadgets. You could invest in gadgets that will reduce your stress. You can invest in home gadgets that you can.
Hello, Dr. Miriam. It's like, if she has some connection issues. Hello, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, so it's from her side. It's from her side. Okay, our time is fast spent. Hopefully she will rejoin us. Bogolo, can you take the floor now?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for such a fruitful and robust discussion that we've had. Just to share my experience, I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Yeah, definitely there are pressures in the academia space that you tend to feel because of the slogan publish or perish, right? So with everything that you need to do, you're expected to prepare for lectures, you're expected to publish, you're expected to progress in your career, you're expected to do community engagement, you're expected to do so many things that you're even put on you're given a list of KPIs where you have to agree with your boss that, okay, these are my list of KPIs. This is what I need to achieve at this time. And if you don't, then you're going to forfeit certain benefits. So that all is just so much, and it can be quite overwhelming. At the same time, you're expected to still pursue your studies and develop yourself. So it can be quite overwhelming and taxing where you don't even know where to start and where not and what to do. In fact, one professor said to me that your laptop is part of your family. Wherever you are, your laptop must also be there. Don't think that it's something that you can put away. That thing traumatized me so much. The thought of my laptop must be with me everywhere, like everywhere. So that was quite traumatic for me, and also trying to do everything that has been shared here today, trying to keep a balanced life of family, of friends, of work, and just somehow feeling like it's just not materializing. And it can be a very isolating feeling where you feel like it seems like everybody is doing it, everybody is delivering except me. I'm just not able to deliver and do the things that need to be done, right? And get to the place where I need to get to. So all this was very quite overwhelming for me until I attended a workshop that was hosted by University of Pretoria, which speaks about transforming the engineering curriculum, right? So for me, I went there thinking that they're going to tell us how to be better lecturers in terms of content and how to deliver better content. I did not think for a second that this would actually have something to do with us and our well-being as lecturers, right? So the entire focus of a 3-day workshop was purely on us as people and not just as lecturers. So for the first time in the academia space, I felt seen as a person and not just a lecturer or just an academic, but a person. So that was quite empowering for me. And the conversations that took place there were also about how do we center ourselves? What is our base, right? Because you need that base where you're going to say, this is my base. And without this base, I'm not able to actually function at my peak, right? So even when you look at your professional athletes, they need to get to the base so that they can perform at their peak. So same applies to us. We need a base as well. We will say, I need to connect to my base. And your base is something that cannot be negotiated. It's something that cannot be sacrificed. So just to mention a few bases, sleep is your base. That thing cannot be compromised or sacrificed and say, no, I'll just get 2 hours of sleep and I'll catch up. There's no catching up. Your body needs the sleep for you to do the very thing that you're trying to sacrifice your body for, which is perform at your best. You actually need sleep. You need a minimum of 8 hours a day to just sleep, not be on your phone, not do anything other than sleep. So it's quite important because it messes with your mental well-being. So we need to sleep, right? The other aspect that was covered was a diet. Something that we take for granted, especially in academic space, because I don't have the time. So let me just grab something quickly at these fast food restaurants. You don't even take a second thought about the impact of that particular thing that you're eating on your body, right? So it's very important that we don't sacrifice or compromise on what we eat. So meal preparation is key when it comes to us eating healthy. If you do not plan what you're going to eat, you're going to end up eating things that you should not be eating. So it's important that we set a day to say, okay, on this day, this is the day where I meal prep. So meal prep is not just for people who want to lose weight, but it's for people who want to keep healthy. And that should be the goal for all of us, that we want to keep healthy. So we cannot compromise on taking care of our bodies, because these are the bodies that we need to use to be able to thrive in the world of academia, in the world of our personal lives, and every other aspects of our lives. So we need to make sure that we keep our diet clean. And then movement. So movement, like I loved what our main speaker shared, that movement came for her as going from one lecture to another. It did not necessarily have to be exercising at a gym or walking at a certain time, but just being active and consciously active. So of late, we've got smart watches that keep track of our steps, right? You'll be surprised at how much a difference it makes taking the elevator instead of the stairs, parking a bit further from the mall. Maybe when you go to the mall, instead of parking as close to the door as possible, you park a little bit further and take a walk that way. So the little walks that you keep doing also do make a huge contribution into your health. So if you feel like, okay, I didn't have time to exercise this morning, do not then neglect the opportunity to walk up and down, to walk to the kitchen and get some water and come back, to stand up every now and again. The one thing that also kills us is we sit for too long, because you'll be sitting in front of your laptop for 6 straight hours, not moving, just sitting there. So it's good that the watches will also remind you that you've been sitting for too long, get up. And we've gotten maybe into the habit of ignoring it and just saying, no, go away. Please let us take it seriously, because it is to the benefit of our mental health. We actually listen to the watch when it says get up and take a bit of a walk or stretch a bit. So with that, I came back then from that seminar. And I just felt like, I think I finally get it, because so many times we share, yeah, do this, do that, do this, do that. And you always do this, but not something, or do that, but not the other. So you end up not feeling that balance, and never also feeling rejuvenated. You get so frustrated that I've been trying this, I've been trying that, but I'm just not feeling rejuvenated. I'm feeling exhausted all the time. That is because we're neglecting the base. And then the fourth and last aspect of the base is our relationships. So our relationships with our friends, our husbands, our kids, our mothers, fathers, and all of those people that we relate to and have relationships with are equally important. So the most important part of those relationships is that they should be at peace as far as possible. I know, especially in marriage, it can be hard to maintain that peace, but maintaining peace in our relationships helps to build that base as well. So I loved what also was spoken about, that you make time to be with your family. That can really help you to build that base peace and help you to be at peace with everyone, to make time to be with family. You do a simple thing like have a meal together. It sounds so simple, yet it's so powerful and impactful to decide that every day as a family, we are going to sit as a family for 1 hour from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock. No phones, no gadgets. We're just going to sit at the dinner table and we're going to have dinner together. And we're going to talk and ask, how was your day? What did you do? What was interesting about your day? What was a challenge in your day, right? So you are touching base and connecting with your family for an hour, come what may. It is a time that you set aside for your family. No compromise, no sacrifice. It's a standing appointment that you have taken very seriously, because it not only benefits your family, but also your mental well-being, right? And so as a result of that, now coming back from this seminar, I spoke to a colleague of mine, Dr. Awodele, and I said to him, hey, what did you think about this thing? I think everybody should know about this. I'm so excited about it. And I feel like we don't speak about it enough. Like people don't really know about it. And he was so excited with me. And he said, yeah, no, let's talk to Professor Ramabodi. We spoke to Professor Ramabodi. And he was like, okay, guys, let's write a paper. So indeed, we wrote a paper that we published. And the title of the paper is Empowering Classroom Activity, How Lecture Mental Wellness Transforms Teaching Dynamics in the Higher Education. So it highlights the fact that when you are at your best in terms of your mental health, not only does it benefit you in terms of your life longevity, but it also benefits you in the classroom. It benefits the students, because when you are at your peak, you are able to then do things that are out of the ordinary. You're able to think more creatively about how to deliver your lectures. You are able to be more impactful with what you do, at what you do, because you have taken the time to rejuvenate and refuel yourself. This morning, my devotion was based on Psalms 23. There's a part that says, my cup runneth over. I loved that part because it means that my cup is so full, it's running over and pouring into other cups. So we need to pour into our cups so that we can be capacitated to run over so much that we pour into other cups, so that we pour from a place of abundance, because we've abundantly filled up our base, and we know that our base is solid. We are now then in a position to pour into others. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bagolo, for that contribution. I'll just quickly run through some of the things we've had from Dr. Miriam's lecture and then Bagolo's together before we go to the Q&A. Something striking that Dr. Miriam said that caught me. So we have to understand where we are at the moment. It's very important. That helps us not to get into the comparison mode. When we understand where we are at the moment, we know that we don't have to compare ourselves with other colleagues, and that gives us a good sense of well-being. Also talked about the fact that we should not only be about ourselves, we should be about others. And we saw the examples that she gave. This thing is about, it's like a seed time and harvest. As you do good for others, as you help others achieve their well-being, we also will have our well-being. And I'll quickly go to Bogolo. She talked about we shouldn't deprive ourselves of sleep. It's important for the good rhythm of our bodies. We should always remember to have good diet, not just grabbing snacks and running along because of time. Then we should exercise, and exercise doesn't mean going to the gym or doing the hard stuff, but it also includes just being active all the time. Then relationships, very important, very, very important. And last of all, she talks about you can't give what you don't have, basically. So using the Psalm 23 example, your cup will only run over because you have something already. So once we are at our peak, we maintain good health and well-being, then we can, out of that abundance, others can benefit from. So thank you very much, everyone, for such an insightful lecture, for your insightful lectures. We really appreciate you all. Now the floor is open. If you have questions, if you have comments to make, the floor is open for us to make our comments. Please be free to write on the chat or raise your hands. Thank you. Yes, we are waiting for our questions, our comments on any of the areas. We've talked about emotional, mental, physical well-being, from any of the areas of anything that we need clarification from what our speaker said? The floor is now open for our comments. Maybe I'll just start with this question. Any of our speakers can help respond. So we have some women that have not found it so easy. For some have had very good supportive spouses, but for others, the story is not as pleasant. Okay, and some have very, what's the word now? Very, should I use impossible? Impossible spouses, people that, should I put it this way, they don't, they see their spouses as a competition, and they don't want to support them. So people in this category, what would be your best advice? How would they navigate? Because that is a real challenge. So how would they navigate? Well, once you have an unsupportive spouse, what would be your advice to them? Seems we can't hear you, Dr. Nang. Can't hear you. Can anybody hear? I mean, if anyone can hear her. Who can hear Dr. Nang? I can't hear her from my side.
I can't hear.
Yeah, we can.
I can't hear at all.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So, how I was going to respond to that is it's essentially about understanding what constraints you have. I think what I wanted to emphasize is that you have to craft your own path. That means that you look at your peculiar circumstance. And I love what Dr. Miriam mentioned, that you know yourself. You know what you have in terms of the people at your disposal. You know the kind of people they are. So what do you do? So it's looking at your limitations, your constraints, and then you find other ways of navigating it. We're called to be creative, but that creativity doesn't stop in our jobs. That creativity also comes in our lives, right? So, for example, I have had to. Normally, we don't have. It's encouraging to say use a personal assistant if you can afford a personal assistant. I can't afford a personal assistant, or at least the level of a personal assistant that would make meaningful interruptions in my work or produce the kind of job I need a person to do. I cannot afford that. But then what I have done is to reach out to some of my students who may not be working at this time. And I look at it as two parts of a coin. What do they gain? So I can pay them a certain amount of money, but they are providing a certain value. What can I replace with or add on to the amount of money I am giving them, knowing that it's not as adequate, right? So what can I teach them? So I intentionally look for people whose career paths are similar to mine. So it's more of working with the person to craft their career paths, but they are also supporting me in simple ways. Okay. What is your constraint? I can't be active all the time. It's like I don't have big pockets of time to get into like a consistent exercise routine. However, if I have young children, and they are babies, I put the babies on my back and I walk up and down and go through my house chores. That's being active, right? So I have to join a bus to come to campus. Instead of riding in a car, it's about a 10-minute walk. I walk the 10 minutes to join the bus so that even on the bus, I can have a conversation with a friend, connecting, right? So I take that 10-minute walk in, 10-minute walk when I get off the bus. That's 20 minutes already. If I'm going between classes and I walk in between my classes or even in class, as I'm sitting in the classroom, instead of sitting through the class, I walk through the classes, around the class. I ask my students, you know what, let's take a break. Everyone, raise your hands up, right? Let's stretch a bit. Let's shake our hands. Or I ask, let's take a 1-minute break. Close your eyes for a minute and let's just keep quiet and focus on what we are thinking at the moment. We cannot have big pockets of time and we all don't have the same situations. But you look at where you are and then craft solutions that are beneficial and fit within the solutions that the environment or the position where you find yourself. So that perhaps is the way I would respond to that question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Na. I don't know if any of our other speakers have any response to that. How to deal with unsupportive spouses or difficult situations. Yes, Dr. Loveland.
Okay, let me just jump in a little bit. What I would say is explore the power of emotional intelligence around it. Get to understand where are the triggers. Now it's you want to get something, but because the person is very close to you, whatever they do would tend to kind of impact us a lot. So it's about time you begin to look at them in a way where you will deal with somebody that is not close to you. So logically rather than emotionally now. And begin to understand what times are the times that I can talk about what I'm doing that will not trigger them because you know that their actions might affect what you're doing. That's one thing I would say. I've had to counsel someone that was in a similar situation. And the part of the emotional intelligence I've worked, meaning she got to understand that if the person is not doing so well at work, they don't want to hear anything about their own progress at work. So I've said, okay, fine, don't mention how much you're doing at work when you know that this is the mood that that person is always saying, said, oh, there is no encouragement. I said, fine, it's okay. Just encourage yourself and look for the network that you have that would applaud you. And the third thing we did was shining the lights on their spouse, even when their spouse don't give them all the support, particularly in public platforms. So, they go for a conference and then I want to acknowledge, the support of my husband, my partner in getting this through. And because they see, their accolades outside of you coming back to them, they tend to, okay, go and do your thing, because they know that, she was going to acknowledge that bit. So that kind of worked a little bit. So one part is tend to begin to be emotionally, how do I put it now, conscious of the situation around you when you're discussing that. And then the second bit I want to also talk about is have little chunks. Like Dr. Nan said, don't compare yourself with others. Have little chunks. Your case is peculiar until the time it evolves. Take little chunks of things. Don't say, oh, Loveling is doing 5 papers at once. So me too, I'm going to push myself 5 papers at once, when you know that the environment you are would only allow you to successfully do 1 or 2. Be proud of the 1 or 2 you're doing until such situations, kind of improves, because you are more important than what you're trying to achieve, if that makes sense. So a memory of is not what we're looking for. It is you being there when people are acknowledging you. I think that's the second, excuse me, that's the second thing. And then the third thing is look for the right timing. Look for the right timing. I've had people that said, oh, I can't work during the day. I can't work during the night. When do you have the peace within your environment to work? So if it's, oh, I'm not going to get any distraction from my spouse when I'm doing it at night, then program yourself where all during the daytime you've sorted out what needs to be sorted out. And then during the night, you can focus. Some will say, oh no, it's during the only the work time I have is when I have to do this. Then find a way during the work time to create along your timetable and block out calendars when you're not teaching or when you don't have meetings, and use that time to dedicate to improving yourself. So that when you're at home, you're not doing it, but when you're at work, you're doing it. So you can begin to balance those things out. Thank you. I think that's all I can add.
Thank
There's
you.
just one other thing I also want to emphasize. I think in my deliberations, I mentioned that if you have the choice, not everybody has a partner at the moment. If you have the choice, choose right. But it works the opposite way. If you see, you have to be, as Lynn said, you have to be emotionally intelligent. There are negative relationships. There are negative organizations. There are negative environments. Remove them if it needs to be done. I think we don't say it enough, and I know it will be a controversial thing for me to say, but that is the reality, that you have to be sensitive to what is happening around you. And if you are working for an organization that is fundamentally impugning on your well-being, this is your life's work. Are you going to spend 10 years, 20 years in that kind of an organization? Are you going to spend 10 years, 20 years amongst people like that? We have to be intentional about our lives. And we also have to ask those questions of ourselves. Are we being the negative people in the environment we find ourselves? I mean, we are pointing fingers at spouses, etc., but we are also spouses. How are you influencing? That's why I keep saying it's about you functioning well, but also giving, functioning well and feeling good the other side, right? So those are the two things. One, pay attention, take notice. If you are with a person in an organization, the people around you can't suck your well-being, and you must limit your interactions with them or remove them if that is an option to keep you sane. But at the same time, you yourself, you can be very negative in terms of even your negativity towards yourself, to others, to the environment, your workspace. So I think we have to be honest about who we are and the people we engage with. And even as a community of academics, Bogolo said something. Why is she going to just one, like the workshop that she talked about, where that was when she came to about her well-being? Why do we hear more about achievement, performance, publications, rather than well-being? When there are many studies and there's a lot of evidence to the fact that who you are and where you are in terms of your well-being is fundamental to your achievement and your performance. There are many studies as like that. So as academics, we're doing the studies, but we are not living the life, right? So we have to have, not just have the conversations, but be the people that we want to see and create the communities and the workspaces that is beneficial to our well-being.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nath. Mary, we'll come to you, but let's just have the other speakers. Bogolo, do you have any response? And Dr. Miriam, any response? Before we move on.
Yes, I will. Yes, I would just say it could be very challenging when you have a spouse that is not supportive of what you do. But then it comes down to the place of communication and discussion, like Dr. Lin said, is to find the moment that you can actually connect with that spouse of yours and have these conversations for him to understand how important it is for you to do these things that you're doing. And then to plead on his softer side to kind of give you the necessary support that you need. And of course, me, as a Christian, I believe that there is nothing God can't do for you. if you commit it to prayers. As you're doing the work, you're committing to prayers, and you just stay back and see how things work out. You just carry on with your work. That's what I'll throw in there.
Thank you very much. Ogolo, any thoughts?
Can I refrain from answering this one? I think I cannot really relate to
Oh,
the
no.
questions. I'd rather
It's okay. It's
answer.
fine. It's fine. It's all right. It's okay. Thank
Dr. Pat, just a point again, because of what Miriam just said about communication. You know that have done list I talked about for myself,
you.
right? That have done list is also for me and my spouse. So we look at what have I done? What have you done? Where have we spent our time?
Mm.
You see, sometimes visualizing where you are is helpful. So for us, it was helpful for us because it was so clear where our times were going. Who was spending more time at home? Who was spending more time at work? And it helps you even balance. Look, we're both in construction field, and perhaps even he is more driven by work and performance than I am. But it's really helpful for you to see how are you spending more than 8 or let me say 20, 30 hours at work, like in your work every day, right? So it's helpful to it's as simple as a list, but it's a very good communicative tool for someone who's ready to listen. You show them this is how we are spending our time. Is it fair to both of us in terms of our career aspirations and how we want to manage things in our homes and in our lives? So that's what I'd also add again to it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Na. Yes. Mary, you can have your comments. The floor is yours. Yes, Mary, the floor is yours. You can have your comment. Make your comment now.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning to the speakers. The words of knowledge. Please, I have a question. And my question is, how do you deal in an environment whereby there are a lot of cliques? You know, how do you find a support system that you don't measure up to some of these cliques and you're all in the same environment? You are being excluded, you're not being carried along in most of the things being done. And how do you deal with such kind of environments? And another thing is, I'm also facing a lot of challenges family-wise because, hey, I think one of the speakers was talking about dealing with home, the children, publications, and all that. I converted to lecturing, and it's almost getting to a year now, and I've not achieved even one publication, all because the workload in the house is, in fact, is too much, and I don't have help, and there are no, things to make some of this work easier for me. So how do I improve and, work on, develop myself to become that which I really want to be? That's what I want to say. Thank you, everyone that have spoken.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. I can actually relate with what Mary just said about finding yourself in an environment that seems kind of hostile and a lot of cliques here and there. But you see, we live in a global village. If the immediate environment you find yourself is not giving you the leverage to bring out your genius and excel, you look out. We're having this conversation this morning from people from all over the world. It can become some kind of platform for you to reach out to people without not necessarily your immediate environment. You reach out to people whom you can relate with outside of your environment. and you will eventually still get at the results that is needed. And then for the issue of maybe you're pressured that 1 year has gone and you don't have any publication. Well, it's typical sometimes, but what may happen or what you should do going forward is what exactly is it that you want to achieve within the period? You break it down into smaller bits, not like looking at it in the whole, look at it in the smaller bits. And if you're able to break it down into smaller bits and reach out beyond your environment, I believe that you're going to very shortly, you'll be raking in results very shortly. That's my contribution to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, that was my experience as well when I first arrived in my previous university, where I felt a bit alone. So definitely also reaching out to other people in the faculty as opposed to just limiting myself to my department. So even the paper that I've just said that I've published, it's actually with people that are outside my department, not with the people that were within the department, right? So I found that the people outside the department were more open and more willing to connect with you. I think you should also take advantage of the fact that the research world is leaning towards a multidisciplinary approach to solving things. So instead of limiting yourself to people that are only within your department, try and leverage on how can I use somebody else from another department. Another paper that we wrote together with a professor from the electronics department, which was about AR, using AR and VR to enhance the learning experience of quantity surveying students, right? So I'm not very well vested in virtual reality and augmented reality, but him being from the background of computer electronics, he is more knowledgeable in that area. So writing a paper with him where he brings that aspect and I'm bringing the aspect of that quantity surveying student makes the world of difference and opened my eyes and my perspective to a different paradigm that I would have otherwise missed if I didn't collaborate with him. So I think open your network up and look into other people and look into collaborating with other people. I'm also open, if you don't mind. I would love to write a paper with somebody else from another country. I'm yet to do that. So perhaps you and me could have our first publication together that is an international collaboration.
Okay, yes.
Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, now go ahead when you finish.
Okay, so I was going to say that, Mary, there's a lot we are going to say, but at the end of the day, you are going to have to take that decision that works for you. But an experience from my own personal experience that I can share is that, look, at a point I had 3 kids, all toddlers, and I was largely the one taking care of them. I've had a lot of support from my mother, but my mother was also in the working world at the time. And I remember this because nothing, like there were no publications, nothing was happening. And what do you call it? Promotion time is due. You have nothing to show for it. And what I was giving to and sometimes you need to get to the point where you actually see where you are also can be the point which propels you to look for little things. And so for me, it wasn't a big thing. And at the time, my little one was nursing, right? Was still nursing. So a lot of the time was for him. I was waking up 5 o'clock every day and doing just 30 minutes of writing. And I had to talk to my husband and say, you know what? The whole day I'm in the house, I'm virtually going around the children, doing this, doing that. All I need from you is 30 minutes every day. And there was a paper I had started with a colleague, which was still sitting on my table. Because the thing is, you can collaborate, but if you yourself cannot put some time into that work, your name won't go on that collaboration. So my colleague had done his part, and this paper was sitting there. For years, I'm talking about years, this paper was sitting there, right? And all I needed was 30 minutes every day. And that paper went out, and it was just a conference paper. 30 minutes every day. So look, where you are is appreciated, but you would have to take the steps. Sometimes it can be just 10 minutes, right? And as Mariam says, you have to break it down into really small bits, really, really small bits to be able to take it one step at a time. But and I make reference to Atomic Habits. It's a book. I don't know whether we will have time to read it, but it mentions something small. Like if a plane is going this way at an incline, no matter how small that angle is, if you just take a small angle and you keep going up that way, eventually you rise up into the skies. What that means for us is that even if it's 10 minutes daily and it's consistent, right? It doesn't mean consistently every day. It means consistently. So even if it's a week, 30 minutes, a week, 30, knowing where you are and what you can commit consistently to it, no matter how long it is, you will get to a point you can be proud of. So Mary, the ball is in your court, but don't lose hope. It's about progress, not perfection. Just taking those steps or small steps, never stop. And then you look back and you'll be surprised at what you have achieved.
Thank you. Dr. Lovely?
Yes, I think it's just to pick up on what Dr. Nas said. Have a routine. I've got 4 kids, and I was in your position so many years back, where 2 years on my table, like Dr. Nas said, I couldn't even write anything. How much more bring it out? And I did everything, but I did not have a routine. I did not put my children on a routine, so I didn't have time. So start with the home front, because they are quite important. All the work you're working in, trying to be yourself is also for them. Put them into a routine. This is breakfast time. This is lunch time. This is dinner. Until you get them into a routine, you yourself will not have a time. So when you put them into the routine, it might take you like 3 months, 4 months to get them into a routine. Then you now look at your routine and look for where the gaps are, where you can work. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like writing. I don't like writing, but I can talk for Africa. So I put on my recording and get an app, and I'll be talking about the research, and it will be transcribing it for me. Once it has transcribed, I will now put it into a Word document, and then I start editing and putting it in place. So there are apps out there, even if you don't have time to write, pour out what you want to say. Everything you want to write about, pour it out, and then you can always look for references to beat it up in different places. And then before you know it, talking and transcribing will at least save you 4 hours of time for you to do that. And watch yourself in about a year after the routine. Get your time, talk through it, edit it. I can guarantee you'll be able to pull out at least 1 to 2 papers in 1 year. So I didn't want to talk about collaboration because Dr. Naz already talked about that. You collaborate, they have done their own part. You have not even managed to do yours. So it is the you that is most important now. You can even come here on the platform, and shout, "Hey, WAiC members, I'm writing on this. Who wants to?" And people will come out. But you need to now do your own part, and it's that part that we're trying to mend. And whether there are cliques, I will tell you, it doesn't stop. I'm the only Black person. I've been in at least 3 universities where I'm the only Black person in my department, and you can imagine how that feels like. So is it going to happen? You will meet people that don't want to work with you. When your success starts rising, some people will even be jealous why you're rising. So get ready for that. It would come. But it is about your resilience and telling yourself it's not about them, it's about me. Success attracts. By the time you start publishing things, people want to hang out with you. People want to be your friend. Why? Because they can smell success. So work on yourself, get yourself together. And people that don't want to work with you will start coming to you. I can guarantee that. All the best.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's any other question again. I would just like to ask one more question, then we'll just, if there are no other questions. There's this issue that we have noticed. Why do women why don't women support women? What is the matter? Because why is it difficult to find women supporting women? And what
There
can we
might be
do?
that narrative.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what can we do to
There
change the
might
narrative?
let's stop let's stop saying that narrative.
Okay.
Let's stop saying that narrative. In the same way that we might have women who don't support women, we have men who don't support men. We have men who don't support women. But because we keep emphasizing that narrative, that's why it seems like so, right? It is there. It's like it's not peculiar to women. If you look at your life, haven't there been women who have supported you?
Of course, sure.
Yes. I mean, think about it, Pat. How do I know you? And look at the kind of support you have given me through your words of encouragement, right? I talked about a friend of mine, Senna. She's been such a strong support. Look at the pictures that I showed you on my presentation. There were men, there were women. Let's stop repeating that narrative.
Okay, but I was just trying to say that it was something I've noticed. So how do we manage it? And I think younger ones are complaining about it. So how do we deal with
Lynn
it?
will talk about that.
Can I drop something quickly? Because I need to jump into another meeting if you don't mind. That narrative has been there because we would expect that if we were going through all that we're going through as women, we should actually not even allow it to be in our midst. I think that's where that narrative will come out from. But the truth of the matter is, it's coming from a place of unconscious bias and complex. When people get to the top, I've been in a situation where colleagues that are men would say, oh, it's because she's a woman, she's got a soft spot. And because you want to prove that you don't have a soft spot, you unconsciously don't know when you do it. And I've listened to people that are like vice chancellors and all of that, women, and we asked the same questions. And they said, once you get to that level, if you're not careful, you lose yourself because you're competing, and you don't know that you're trying to become a man in your position, whereas you should just be a woman in that position. When they have difficult decisions, they say, oh, women can't make difficult decisions. And because you want to show that a woman can make difficult decisions, you say, okay, no, it's unconscious, but it's about we taking our personality to wherever hierarchy we find ourselves. And it doesn't matter if we're compassionate, so be it. If we are people that are spotted, so be it. That is what makes us women. And putting it out there and not allowing anybody to coerce us otherwise is something that would kind of help us again. And sometimes when we get to the top, I've had experience that would make me say, oh, women don't help women. I was in a situation, I was trying to reach a professor that's a woman, and I was like, I really need this. And the woman told me, I looked at my diary. In 6 months' time, I said, what? What do you mean by in 6? I actually replied, I said, what do you mean by in 6 months' time? You're a woman, you shouldn't be telling me in 6 months' time. Men were telling me, okay, I'll squeeze that time for you in 2 weeks. And then the women I contacted were giving me, 3 months, 6 months, and I was asking, what is that? And the person said, oh, okay, I didn't know you really wanted it urgently. I said, even the fact that I reached out to you, you should have even known, okay, what's the reason why you reached out in the first place? And I made a personal decision. As long as a woman is coming out, I'm not being sexist or anything. I see it from the perspective of we struggle a lot to be where we are, to have that voice. So when you see somebody reaching out to you, even if you don't have the time, tell them, okay, I can spare 10 minutes. So they initially, let me just hear what you have to say, even if my let them know my schedule is tight, but I can squeeze out 10 minutes. And that 10 minutes might just be to encourage the person and said, my diary is full for a long time, but you can send me a message on this. I can have time, I will reply you back, and then until we're able to get a meeting. I think it's all just having the mindset that if we don't develop ourselves, there will not be women in the room. I sit on panels where I look around and I can see 1 or 2 women out of about 50. And then when it's time to vote, and it's a democratic vote, whose voices will be heard? It's still the same men that will make the decisions. It's still the same men. Why? Because we're not pulling ourselves to get into those rooms. So that's just my own contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know anyone has...
Can I say something?
Yes, please. Can Yes, please
Yeah,
go ahead.
what I would say to that narrative is let everyone be the change. Women have been seen not to support women. Be the woman that will support another woman. Let me be the woman that will support another woman. One at a time, if we become the change that is needful, the narrative will eventually go away. So that's just what I want to say. Just be the change. Be that one that will make a difference. Let me be that one that will make a difference. Because at whatever level you're in at, there are those who are at a lower run looking up to you. And so for those ones who are looking up to you, be the change. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miriam. Any other thoughts on this before we close? Yeah,
I think just to add on to what Dr. Miriam has just said, I think we need to apply more grace towards women. I find that we are extra hard when there's a woman in a position of leadership. We question a lot. You'll hear us asking questions like, how did she even get here? She must have gotten help. Of course, everybody gets help. Even men get help to get to where they get to. But because it's a woman, we somehow want to analyze and digest why her, why is she where she is, right? Instead of just saying, we are happy that she is where she is and we're going to support her, right? So we just need to apply grace. And the same applies from the top down approach, that when you get to the top, apply grace to your women subordinates, right? We just tend to be much harder on ourselves, firstly, and therefore much harder on other women. Because unfortunately for us, we have to work twice as hard as our male counterparts to get half of the advantages that they have. Now, once you get there, people are going to be questioning, why? How did you get here? Why? But if it was a man, nobody would question anything. Everybody would be like, oh, that's nice. Because I remember just a very stupid example when we had just completed varsity. A lady, classmate of ours, took a photo instead of next to a BMW. Everybody was like, no, it's from the boyfriend's car. No, there's no way it's her car. But when another guy, same cohort, right? He stood in front of also a similar BMW. Everybody's like, wow, this is wonderful. This is beautiful. And I was like, wow, same car, same people, fresh graduates, but it's okay if it's this guy. We believe that it's his. There was no underhandedness in him procuring this car. But because it's a woman, it's like, no, it must be the boy. We must somehow justify that success with something that is unwarranted or something that takes away from the beauty of saying, this is beautiful. This is what this woman has achieved. So I think over and above being the change, let us just apply more grace, man. Let's apply grace.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. We've come full circle. I want to believe time is fast spent. I know we've enjoyed our discussion so far. The conversation continues on the platform. You're free to chat any of the speakers. You can email them just to find more clarifications. You know, we can't just be here for all the day, but we have really enjoyed ourselves today. And we really want to appreciate our speakers, especially for the time, their precious time, the sacrifice of their time. They had other commitments, but they chose to come and speak with us today. So we are grateful, from Dr. Nat, Dr. Miriam, Dr. Loveleen, and of course, Bugolo. Thank you all for your insightful comments, being yourselves, sharing your authentic selves with us. We really, really do appreciate it. And I'm sure we would reach out to you from time to time to make some inquiries or for some counsels. Please do oblige us. Thank you very much. And to all our panelists, our participants, we really appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
From the very start.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
From the very beginning till now, thank you for holding on till now. Thank you for the energy you bring into the room, your comments on the chat. Thank you very, very much. And let's not forget, in consistency lies the power. We need to be consistent with these things that we'll learn. We need to put them into practice. Just like Dr. Nat said, and all the speakers have said, little by little, then we become. So we would meet again next month by God's grace. Next month, next month will be a very explosive one. We'll be having men on the platform next month, and we want everyone to come and really discuss. We want to hear from their perspective, what they think about some of these gender issues. It's been a while since we've had men on the show, so we want to we'll be having men, and we appreciate you coming in with your questions, with your interrogations, just to so that we can all forge together as women in the built environment. So I do wish you all the very best of the remaining part of the day. And of course, by God's grace, we will meet together next week. So see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you too very much, Pat. We're really grateful.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.